are now live in YouTube.
Understanding Teaching Learning Dynamics in Crisis Situations. Week 3, dated 14/8/2020, 3 p.m. A warm afternoon and welcome to everybody for the Teachers Development Program Week 3 under the theme Understanding Teaching Learning Dynamics in Crisis Situations. Example is not the main thing in influencing others. Rather, it's the only thing. The words of Albert Schweitzer explicate the apt importance given by Cyril Malabar Diocese of Thakale on education and educating. It's a series of 8 programs conducted, one each week, and this is the third technically supported by St. Anthony's College, Shillong, and also supported by St. Alfonso College of Arts and Science, Susepuram, Karingal. And today's program is organized in collaboration with Sacred Heart Matriculation High Secondary School, Padandalumud, Kanyakumari. All of us today are being encouraged by the holistic person, His Excellency Mar George Rajendran, SDB, Bishop of Takla Diocese. With proper guidance from the Vicar General of Takla Diocese, Very Reverend Father Thomas Pauthaparambul, who is the chief organizer of this program, the academic programs and trainings are performed with excellence. New ideas return into original dimensions from the inspiration every master receives. This program will enrich the teachers with new ideas to come out the crisis as we face in classes every time we venture in. The words of Victor Hugo rightly instigate the teachers as one who opens the doors of schools and educational institutions, closes the prison. And today's program is scheduled first with prayer invoked by Reverend Father Sanil John, correspondent, Alfonso Matriculation High Secondary School, Nagarkoil. May I request Reverend Father Sanil John to invoke God's guidance?
Amen. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day.
Father, can you please check your audio? Can I hear you, Father?
Please tell him audio is not there. Please tell him, Father Sanil, audio is not there. We did not hear your prayer. We did not hear your prayer. Audio is not working.
It is unmuted, Father, but I think the selection of the microphone, if you can just select your microphone properly. No, no, Father, we cannot hear you.
We heard you in the beginning.
It could be a loose connection, Father. Yes, we did hear you in the beginning.
Thank you, Father, for leading us from darkness to the light of the Lord. Too often, we give children answers to remember rather than problems to solve. The words of Roger Levin take us to have the welcome address by Miss Soumya of Sacred Heart Matriculation High Secondary School. Ma'am?
A pleasant afternoon to you all. It's my golden opportunity to welcome our esteemed and respected guests and our beloved participants. Today, we are present here for the third session of Teachers Development Program on Educational Foundations and Trends on the theme Understanding Teaching Learning Dynamics in Crisis Situations, organized by the Syro Malabar Catholic Diocese of Thakalai. The blessings of Lord Almighty have been graciously sought through the prayers of Reverend Father Sanil John, correspondent of Alfonsa Matriculation High Secondary School, Nagarkoil, to initiate the webinar. Passion is needed for any great work, and for a revolution, passion and audacity are required in big doses. It's my pleasure to extend a warm welcome to the patron of this program, His Excellency Mar George Rajendran, SDB, the Bishop of Thakalai Diocese. His passion for growth and courage to achieve perfection is being transmitted to the teachers through this program in big doses in order to revolutionize the teaching learning scenario in our schools in the diocese. It says positivity and the desire for growth that has paved the way to this enhancement program for the teaching community. A heartfelt welcome to you, Your Excellency. Every great work makes the human face more admirable and richer, and that is its whole secret. We too have such an admirable human face, and it is carried forward by the chief organizer of the program, Very Reverend Father Thomas Pothuparambil, the Vicar General of Thakalai Diocese. His integrity, wisdom, and compassionate attitude help people to shine out with their maximum potential. I feel honored to extend a cheerful welcome to you, your father. My words would not suffice to describe his dedication and commitment towards creating a healthy social environment. He is an epitome of simplicity and humbleness. Such graceful is our today's resource person, Reverend Father George Palamatatil, SDB, the director of Siloam Umiam, Meghalaya. I'm delighted to accord a warm welcome to you, dear Father. I extend my gracious welcome to all the respected provincials of various congregations, esteemed correspondents and principals of the various educational institutions under the Diocese of Thakalai. I gladly welcome you, Reverend Fathers and Sisters. I take great privilege to welcome our technical partners, St. Anthony's College, Shillong. It is through their tireless and constant support that we are able to gain knowledge through this virtual media. I wholeheartedly welcome Reverend Father Joby Joseph, rector of the college, and Reverend Brother Albert Longley, the principal of the college. A hearty welcome to Professor Nathaniel Majau, also for his absolute and diligent support. A very cordial welcome to all in St. Alfonso College of Arts and Science, our program partner. I also ardently welcome all my fellow friends, the teachers of all English and Tamil medium schools and college in the Diocese of Thakalai. Welcome to you all, dear teachers. I once again graciously welcome you all to this virtual mode of gaining knowledge. With this, I, Saumya, take leave of you so that you can sit back and enhance your skills as teachers to deal with the current situation of crisis. Thank you.
We are warmed by the meaningful welcome address. Thank you, Samya ma'am. The best teachers are those who show you where to look, but don't tell you what to see, says Alexander K. Trenfer, whose words exactly match for the resource person to be introduced by Ms. Chitra Shibu. I invite you, ma'am, to introduce our today's resource person to fill our thoughts and souls with the theme Understanding, Teaching, Learning Dynamics in Crisis Situations. Ma'am?
A warm greetings to you all. At this moment, I remember the wordings of Mark Twain, who said, "Great people are those who make others feel that they too can become great." I am profusely delightful and feel honored to have the opportunity to introduce our resource person, Reverend Father George Palamatathil SDB. His sense of responsibility and service to the society has earned him a respectable and adorable person. Reverend Father George Palamatathil SDB is the Vice Principal and Camus Animation Director of St. Anthony's College, Shillong, Meghalaya. He is also the founder and director of Siloam, a transformational leadership resource center, Umiam, Meghalaya. He possesses triple MA in social work, psychology, and sociology. He has completed his doctorate of psychology from San Francisco, the United States of America. Reverend Father George has been in the Northeast India since 1970 and has served in various positions of responsibility. He has been an active youth animator, social worker, and the founder and the first director of Bosco Reach Out, one of the most prominent NGOs working in Northeast India. He is well known as a counselor who conducts programs and workshops for the wholesome growth of the students and teachers of schools, colleges, and universities, as well as for parents on parenting skills. He is reputed in organizing sessions to enhance professional and personal effectiveness in life and relationships. He is a man who aptly integrates his professional expertise as a counselor with theological and biblical orientations for counseling individuals, couples, and families. If I have to introduce him in just a sentence, I would say that he is a person who extends a patient listening and effective advice to anyone in need of it. The teachers of the institutions in the Diocese of Taklay are privileged to have an opportunity to listen to him on understanding teaching learning dynamics on crisis situations. Thank you.
Thank you for introducing the resource person. It's being informed to the teachers that you can ask your doubts and queries throughout the session and direct them on the Q&A on Zoom. Kindly note. The aim of education should be to teach us rather how to think than what to think, rather to improve our minds so as to enable us to think for ourselves than to load the memory with the thoughts of other men, mentions Bill Beatty. On this conscious notion, here we have the resource person, Reverend Father George Palamatathil, SDB, to lead us on the right track towards understanding, teaching, learning dynamics in crisis situations. Father?
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm really happy, honored to be part of this webinar that has been the initiative of the Diocese of Taklay and the Education Commission in order to enhance various learnings, especially for all those who are involved in the field of education. I want to thank the Bishop George Rajendran for inviting me for this webinar, as well as I give my greetings, send my greetings to Father Thomas, the Vicar General, and all the other fathers, and in a special manner also to Professor Isaiah, who has been in touch with me over this sharing. And I want to wish the best, in all your educational ventures, especially all of you teachers and persons involved in this work of education with our young people all around the world. And particularly, I would say right now, to the students of your own particular school. Thank you for the various coordinators of the program today and for introducing me in a very elaborate manner. That's always strange because that reminds me of a little story. It was a funeral service, and the body of the person, the dad who died, was brought to the church or to the hall, and wonderful friends came up to give them a eulogy. And of course, eulogies are always in good measure. And so the one who was a close friend, dear friend, began to talk about how great this guy was, how wonderful he was, what a great social worker and leader, and what a great father, and what a great husband. Now, his wife was listening with their only child. The little child was in her arms. And after listening to this on and on narration about this husband of hers, was exactly not a perfect human being, much less a good father, she couldn't bear it anymore. And so she let go of the little child onto the ground and said, honey, go and see if that's really your dad in the coffin, or if they are talking about someone else. So much like that, when I hear the introductions, and you are kind and generous, thank you very much. but we really have to look around to see about whom we are talking. But nonetheless, I wish you a wonderful afternoon. I'll try to share a few thoughts from my experience as well as the experience of others. You will see some of the materials that I'll be sharing. It has also reference to various books, various authors who are really trailblazers in this field of education. So now let me get back to our topic of the title of today's is Understanding Teaching and Learning Dynamics in Crisis Situations. So just a moment, I'll get it back to the slideshow. So this is our title today, and there is no need to explain whether we are in some sort of crisis or not. We are all fully aware of that. I don't need to expand on this crisis situation, but what I'd like to do, just like the wonderful prayer that Father, I think Sunil, he said about the Our Father, a beautiful prayer. I want to take us all in every crisis to the God of mercy and compassion. Okay. Okay, there is something that I've not done right. So once again, coming back to a crisis situation, I'd like to take you all to a crisis situation that happened maybe 2,000 years ago during the time of Jesus. And it's presented in Matthew chapter 15, verse 12 to 39. And you'll know that is when Jesus feeds the 4,000 people. It was a crisis situation. Jesus had been teaching all those thousands of people for 3 days. And notice how he starts with, I am filled with compassion. I'm filled with compassion because they have been with me 3 days and they have nothing to eat. I don't want to draw parallels to the pandemic and the lockdowns, but nevertheless, a lot of people are in crisis. First of all, in physical situations, physical needs and wants. What was the response of those poor 12 disciples? As any of us would respond in a crisis, they said, where shall we find enough bread in this wilderness? It's just impossible. In a pandemic, in a lockdown like we are experiencing, we as teachers and leaders, I'm sure we feel how limited we are. How limited we are. Where can we find enough bread? Where can we find enough resources to keep everyone giving their best? But of course, in a second casual manner, Jesus asked them, how many loaves do you have? How much do you have? What are your resources right now that you have? Well, I'm sure they said in a very soft voice, 7 and a few small fish. I have not added the rest of what the apostles said, but what is this among so many? Helplessness. But what I would like to reflect on and hold it as an overarching theme for today's presentation is this word, I am filled with compassion. This was the compassion of the Master. And I hope in my presentation, this aspect of the compassionate approach in a teaching, learning situation will come through. And I present this as my prayer for all of us, that God may truly make us compassionate in our approach, and that will satisfy everyone. We may be limited, our capacities may be limited, but God's resources are immense. There is enough even in these worst times of pandemic. Let's hold on to that as an important thing. Well, those who know me know that I love cartoons, and here is one from the pandemic situation. For those of you who find it difficult to read what the doctor says, he says, good news, you don't have coronavirus. How we all could hear that. But of course, look at this patient. He says, but can you still quarantine me from my kids? Maybe that's also a response some of us might make when we are at our wits' end. We wish we were in some sort of quarantine. Another one, you know, the cartoonist, very much Indian, and this is something else that I think reflects the coronavirus situation. The lady is reading the newspaper, no cooking oil in the market. So she has to improvise. She has to be creative. And she did use some oil for cooking, and the person at the far end of the table feels, wow, it smells so sweet. The others are not quite sure. And situation gets really out of hand when the man comes in from his bathroom and he says, what has happened to my hair oil? We all understand it. Crisis situations demands crisis responses. Well, it's a matter of joke, I guess. Another one from the Quint. I like this. Self-explanatory. COVID virus is totally out of syllabus. Even now, as you know, people all over the world, scientists, medical communities are still struggling, even though we know that Russia has come up with some sort of vaccine. Nevertheless, this is still out of our control, out of our hands, out of our syllabus, especially for us teachers and students. Something I like to place in front of you from the newspapers and cuttings, and that is the world today in the education scenario has 157 crores of young people, students in schools and colleges that is confronting this situation in a very special way. So that is the large universe we are talking about. And as far as India goes, it's about 32 crores of students finding this coronavirus is out of our syllabus. We are called to confront, we are called to come up with new ways of handling our educational interventions for our students. I have mentioned the two countries, Australia and Germany, two studies. As we move to further the slides, we'll come back to those later. We'll refer to those. We all know this sign, stop. Those of you who are from the containment zone, this is something that we always come across. And during this time, we stop. What if this stop means stop learning for us in the educational field? Those of us educationalists, teachers, parents, leaders, can we afford to stop learning during this corona times? No. There are more stops coming. What does this stop refer? For teachers, does it mean we stop teaching? We just cannot stop teaching. So stop learning and stop teaching will take on a different dimension because we can never stop learning. We can never stop learning. We are always learning because life never stops teaching. We can never stop learning because life never stops teaching. No coronavirus, no pandemic, no earthquakes, nothing can stop us from learning. And if in our approach to our students, if we can have this as something to go by the way, those of you think that I created this, I didn't. These are one of the many contributions that internet gives us. It's all available there, but this touched me so much that I try to always remember this. At this time, I invite you, my dear teachers, and all of us watching this webinar to consider a couple of questions. As we said, stop, not stop learning, but what have we learned during this lockdown about ourselves as teachers and ourselves as individual persons? That is something that we should pay attention to. I would even invite you, those of you who have a notepad, point out and look at it and reflect it and say, what have I learned during this lockdown? Me as a teacher and also as a person, how have I learned? For me, I've learned something new, being invited to this webinar, I'm learning something new about how to talk to a screen. We are not familiar, but I'm learning. So if you see that I'm not comfortable, it's because we're learning. What have we learned as teacher and as a person? And second thing is, what have we learned about our students? Some of us are in link with our students online. Many of us are not. Have we learned something about our students? And I would always say, learn something positive about our students. As we go further, this aspect will be brought more clearly. Often we associate teaching and learning. In other words, if I taught somebody something, he or she will have learned. So we tend to think that it is automatic. But I'm sure your experience in classroom situations and your own life experience will say that, oh, that is not automatic. You have taught, but at an examination, we realize that what feedback we get from our students seems to make you doubt, did I really teach these guys the way they have responded? Because we forget that teaching and learning are not automatic. Here is a cartoon. I like this. So this guy says, I taught Stripe. Stripe is this little dog, how to whistle. It's a great achievement. And then his friend says, I don't hear him whistling. And of course, you read it. I said, I taught him. I didn't say he learned it. So our role as teachers is sit over when we have taught. That's it. I think we all understand that our teaching doesn't end where our textbook ends. That continues until our students and others have learned it. Now let me come back to this article, actually a video clip on ABC Australia. This just 2 days ago, I was on YouTube, picked up. And they talked about how online learning, online classroom learning is taken great strides in Australia. They were combining a study of their results. And while they praised the technology as being really on the upside of things, they also watched for some of the fallouts of this technological online learning. And they didn't mention any details, maybe in another study that comes, but they concluded by saying that while technology is the upside of learning, we have to be very, very cautious and pay great attention to managing the downside. There are lots of things that happen on the downside. Those of you who are online teaching will know that everything is not upside, but also downside. We'll be talking a little more about this in our coming slides. Last week, I was also present for the webinar, and I was watching Father Johnny present a beautiful presentation on the relevance of education, certain principles of education and principles of education. And he definitely mentioned something about this Choluteca Bridge. These days, it's all over the internet. Me too, picked it up because it has some reference to what I'm talking about. You know where the Choluteca Bridge, when you see the picture, you will see it. It's in Honduras. And this was originally built in 1938 and rebuilt in 1996 with best technology. However, what really happened was, even though it was built with the best technology, best technicians, and to withstand the worst hurricanes and storms that Honduras faces, in the very same year as it was rebuilt, 1996, tropical storm Mitch did some devastation, and you see it on the picture. Father referred to it. The bridge is intact, but the course of the river is changed. And now what's the use of this beautiful structure? So my question would be to you and to me, my dear friends, is we may have a wonderful school, wonderful education system. We may have a wonderful syllabus and all that, but constantly we have to ask ourselves, is it relevant? Is it serving the purpose? Or do we need to come up with certain other responses? Over the years, those of us who are in teaching, I'm sure you teach same class, your class teachers in some schools or in classes, and you may teach same subject, and we may also teach same people. So here's a story. Once again, I got a cartoon from somewhere and I liked it. So the dad, when the boy came in with the result, he's asking, so son, how did your results go? Did you pass? Did all pass in the school, the class? And the boy says, a little boy in kindergarten, he says, well, dad, all passed, only the teacher failed. And the teacher failed. The dad asked, yeah, how come? He says, only the teacher is teaching the same class. So obviously, in the mind of this little boy, the teacher has failed. So my question to all of us is constantly this: are we teaching the very same class, very same subject, very same people, or are we moving ahead with what is needed? Here, let me mention something that happened. This again, just end of July, a German study of 1,000 parents, and they were studying the effects of online teaching. And I'm not so much concerned about how effective, how wonderful it is, but I'm looking at the downside of a few things. So here are a few facts. They said 38% of people online, online students, the parents are reporting that these students spend about 2 hours a day on online sessions. But they also say, but they spend more than 5 hours with their mobile devices on TV or on smartphone or online. So that is the situation in Germany. They also mentioned, this is where I think we as teachers, as educators, have to be worried about this. They said 45% of these online students who go online, have zero contact with their teachers. This is in Germany, where I guess they would not have any problem with the internet and things like that. My question would be, my reflection would be, my dear friends, do we have zero contact with our students, or it's much higher? I'm sure some of us some do indulge in much higher contact, because this student-teacher contact in learning situation, not only in education, in our growth and development, is absolutely important. And that's why I have mentioned that this calls for a new response. Let me quote my friend, the coordinator today, called Bearing It, has mentioned several beautiful quotations from Mark Twain and others. And here is one from Albert Einstein. Education is what remains after one has forgotten what one has learned in school. So if you ask the students today who are not in school, they left school, they're locked down, what have you learned? This would be an answer verifying what Dr. Einstein said. So it is not, as he says in the next one, it is not a collection of facts. This was quoted from someone else too, similar lines, but the training of the mind to think. This is true education. Another quotation that I always share, whatever format I meet with, is this quotation from Albert Einstein. He said, the more I studied, I came to understand how little I know. The more I studied, I came to understand how little I know. I'm not here talking about knowledge of facts, but I am just wanting us all to pay attention to his sense of humility. That should mark a great teacher. That should mark the dynamics of teaching and learning. Dr. Einstein the greatest mind of the last century, says, the more I studied, I came to understand how little I know. For us, it might be the other way. The little I studied, oh, I came to learn so much. And that is starting at the wrong end. Let's imitate this quality of humility in this teaching, learning dynamics for our new response to our students. This is part of a new response that I'd like to suggest. I'm placing everything in context, and the summary would come soon enough. We all know this. Children learn best when they like their teacher and they think their teacher likes them. And here, earlier I was talking with Bishop Rajendran. There is this saying of our common founder, Don Bosco, the founder of the Salesian Society, who says, it is not enough to love young people, but they must know that you really love them. They must know. So similarly here, children learn best when they like their teacher and when they think their teacher likes them. That's very important. Make sure that they really believe and convince that my teacher loves me, and then true learning takes place. That's leading us into something else here. One more, a very beautiful suggestion, quotation from Nicolas Zaffaroni, who says, students who are loved at home come to school to learn. You read it? Students who are not come to school to be loved. And I really think this is so important today more than ever. In this lockdown situation, a crisis situation, our classrooms, our interactions with our students should not be, as Einstein would say, transferring of facts. It should be an attempt to make them feel loved, secure, important, appreciated, creating a relationship. And that's what we are going to talk about in a little more detail. In other words, our teaching learning dynamics is a relationship. Now, more than ever, whether we are enough degrees to our name, whether we have done every form of educational initiatives, if we do not establish a relationship that makes the students feel that they are loved and the teacher likes me, and our classrooms becomes a place for them to be loved, we may not be achieving what students require during crisis situation. Let's qualify this relationship is just three things. This is not exclusive, but they are important. A listening relationship. Usually teachers and priests, we all have a talking relationship. It's all about, we are talking and we are professional. We are talking and we give very little chance to listen. A caring relationship. And I might add this one that will underline, understanding relationship. And all these are linked because we listen in order to understand. We care because we understand something of what's going on. This is the only way to move ahead in crisis situation. I put up there APJ on the screen. We cannot but always give credit. Always, we have to give credit to APJ for being such a wonderful human being. And his words of wisdom will sustain us. In this, he says, in life, people do not remember how you looked, how you talked, how you walked, but they will remember how you made them feel when you were with them. So it really doesn't matter how we talked, how many degrees we have, how we try to impress someone, but our students will never forget how we made them feel. Going back to the first quotation there, what teachers made them feel. This understanding relationship. Let me talk very briefly about this. This is obvious. We all know that a lot of people, everyone, we included, we would always say that so-and-so teacher had a significant positive impact on their life. I am here, you are all wherever you are, or we are in our particular professions in life. I am sure it's partly because of someone significant showed that they cared and they made us feel accepted and loved. And they had perhaps a caring, understanding relationship. This is what makes us be remembered by people when classrooms are closed, internet is no more there, and they are moved on in life. Let us develop whatever it takes to develop an understanding relationship. Here, let me go to an author, a great educationist from the United States. His name is Parker Palmer. And he has written wonderful books. If any of you would like to read a book that you felt, oh, I wish I had written that book. This is the feeling I had as I read this book. The name of this book is The Courage to Teach. The Courage to Teach by Parker Palmer. Summarizing a few points from here. He talks about really good teaching. And he says, good teaching is not about techniques. Good teaching is not about techniques, but it has all to do with the identity and integrity of the one who teaches, the teacher. I am not against all of us acquiring skills and techniques in teaching. We should. But in the process of acquiring technique, we should not forget the person of the teacher. Here, I have put that word technique and knowledge. When we are worried about technique, we are worried about transferring knowledge. And we know that transferring knowledge is not the end of education. It's not the end of life lessons and leading them to growth and development. But if we are preoccupied with techniques, which means that we are only worried about transferring knowledge in many ways maybe, but Parker Palmer says, do not underestimate the value of the identity and integrity of the person. And here I'm reminded of a great psychotherapist. Most of us would have come across his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey. I cannot but forget something I read 15 years ago. It has a reference to this. He says, all of us are so worried, so concerned about acquiring techniques, different skills, presentation skills, speaking skills, and all that. But they forget about character building of the person concerned. We may be preoccupied with various techniques, but if we neglect our person, our characteristics, our character, and if we are without an integrity, then the lessons we teach are not going to last. That's why he talks about effectiveness. Coming down to another very important notion that Parker Palmer talks about is the who. There's nothing to do with the World Health Organization while we are talking about pandemic. The who refers to something else. So he presents it this way. When we as teachers, candidates, when we go to interview to the principal or the management for a teaching post, most often we have all our credentials, all our degrees, and all our subject expertise. So they might ask beyond what's our name and all that. So what do you teach? Obviously referring to what subjects. And we say, well, I teach maths or physics or chemistry or social science, whatever. And then if the person is interested in getting to know something more, he might ask, well, tell me how you teach. So first is what, second is how. So we might say, well, I use a lot of audiovisual materials and I do a lot of internet and I do a lot of online teaching groups and things of that sort. All right. I'm sure they accept that, your creativity. And sometimes if the one person who is interviewing you is more interested in you, they might ask, well, tell me, why did you choose this profession of teaching? Why? The why of teaching? Well, we may have many reasons. I'm not going into that. But then Parker Palmer says, very rarely we ask the who question. We are very familiar with the what, the how, and the why, but we sometimes do not ask the who question. What he's referring to is it's not about the students, but he's talking about the who, the person, the teacher who teaches. He's pointing out to the identity and the integrity. And I've been very impressed by this message, this insight that Parker Palmer talks about, that if I stand in front of someone, I am being paid attention to, not for my words, not by my techniques, but for who I am teaching. Speaking from the line of psychology, if I may, I would like to mention something about technique and the who. So in psychological counseling training, it is said that we use a lot of techniques in counseling, techniques in listening, and understanding, and attentive listening, questioning, and all that. And these techniques are important when we are learning. But this expert says the techniques that we have learned as psychotherapists, they step out the moment the real therapist emerges. The moment the real counselor, the person of the counselor with all these wonderful qualities comes into the scene, he lets go of his techniques. So to summarize that, I would say, let us all, not only as teachers, but as persons, let's go beyond the technique to the heart of relationship. This is something that all of us might have seen, talks about education system. A very little comment on this, but I'd like you to pay attention to Albert Einstein's words. Everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. Sometimes, due to various reasons, our education system may not be paying attention to individual persons, and they're being a genius. I'm sure the new education policy 2020 is counting on a few of these things to pay attention to the individual differences and individual potential. Let's keep this in mind. The first sentence, everybody is a genius. Well, for those of you who are teachers on a daily basis, might be hard to see all your students being geniuses. It takes a teacher with an understanding relationship to realize that, well, there is somewhere deep down a genius lurking, waiting for us to discover them. Now, something very practical. In order to establish an understanding relationship, I'm going to mention a few basics. And the basics are related to what can we do as teachers in order to understand, and through this understanding, develop an understanding relationship. And making it very brief, many of you who have done some sort of educational courses, degrees, psychology or educational psychology or psychology itself, would have come across the name Abraham Maslow, a developmental psychologist. You may have also heard about his pyramid of needs, different levels of need system. Please pay attention that here we are referring not to any physical need system, but we are referring only to psychological need system. Now, this is universal. Every human being has got this need. So every child that has come into our school system, into our learning system, will have this right from the moment of its birth. And I might add, every one of us, whether we are teachers or parents or whatever profession we lead, we also have this need. It's just that as we grow, develop in years, some of these needs have moved up. But please keep in mind that if we have not satisfactorily fulfilled these needs, some of these will come to haunt us later in life. The very basic need of every human being is a need for safety and security. Let me not elaborate too much, but this safety is where every infant receives the best possible atmosphere for growth as safety. We all need it. Without that safety, nothing can really grow. To be safe from outside, to be safe with me, myself, and also to make sure that others are safe in my company. This is very important because if I didn't have the safety needs as a child, when others didn't make me feel secure, they criticized me, or they bullied me, or they did other things that really made me insecure in class. Please understand, some of the reasons why students are absent, why they avoid, they cut school, is partly a lot to do with being uncomfortable, insecure in school situation. Now, how does this affect teachers? If as a young person growing up as a child, I didn't feel secure, never felt safe, then even as an adult, even if I have a PhD or I have a lot of degrees, I won't feel safe until I have made somebody else in my class unsafe. Through our words, through our remarks, through our ignoring them, good efforts, maybe a genius in my class, but I ignore him because I'm never comfortable having geniuses in my class. So keep that in mind as I go to the next need. Hopefully, after a sufficient level of security needs met, there is the second one, which is acceptance. We all know acceptance means being loved, being accepted, being affirmed by others as being good. Many people who are geniuses don't discover it because very few people accept them. They are, they are rebellious, they are this, they are that. We as teachers, as educators, as leaders, as parents, we have a responsibility to provide this acceptance in our schools. Recall one of the previous slides that we mentioned, that students from homes where they are loved, they come to learn. But from homes or situations where they are not loved, they come to be loved. Can we make our classroom a place where they feel they are loved? Because this is very important, because if in these very basic settings of home and the school, our children don't meet up with acceptance and understanding and appreciation, this need is so urgent that they will go searching for it elsewhere, and often in destructive ways. I don't want to elaborate on this, but you understand. And the same thing, as we move up, there is a third need to be important, to be effective, to be considered affirmed. I'm worth something. And one practical thing to feel important is if I have got certain skills, whether it is writing or painting or art or music or speech or whatever, these are things that add to the importance of a person, a growing up person. Very briefly, if we have not had this appreciation, feeling of importance, or if everyone in our growing up stages thought of us as worthless, never thought that we could be somebody, one is a negative traits that will take place, and the other one is when we grow up as adults, we will always seek attention, we'll always seek power, and we'll always seek control. So classroom is a wonderful place to exert control. And especially if we are aware that we didn't have much control growing up, this is a great place to exercise control and also cause a lot of damage. While I talk about these three needs, let's also teach our students one very important thing, and that is these three needs of safety, acceptance, importance cannot be met by oneself. Cannot be met by oneself. We make any amount of effort. If we have any amount of money, we try to satisfy these needs of safety, acceptance, importance. We know that they don't last. The only people who can satisfy these three needs are others. So now, I repeat, these needs can be met not by self, but only by others. And that makes us reflect on the importance of helping all our young people to have the right relationship so that these needs can be met. For someone who is lonely, someone who is depressed, someone who is isolated, ignored, it's impossible for them to meet these states. And of course, I may go to the fourth stage that Abraham Maslow speaks about, the self-actualization needs or effectiveness needs. This is more for people who are past maybe age of 20, 25, 30. And I guess we teachers, we should hopefully be somewhere at this level where we are seeing joy in seeing our children grow up and establish themselves. We rejoice in their growth. And in this case, if we can make it into very ordinary words, while the early needs are a need to be loved by others, in the effectiveness stage, it's a need to love others. We are looking for opportunities to love, opportunities to give, opportunities to understand. I don't want to take away anything from here, but characteristic of people who reach this stage is a capacity to understand, to look after others, these altruistic tendencies of caring for others. This comes at this stage, at the effectiveness stage, not at the early stage. So as I conclude this, all I want to say is, let us be as generous as possible to make others, especially our young people, as safe and secure, important and effective. And we are in a very privileged situation in the classrooms. If we can make our classrooms places which are safe for everyone, learning will take place. If our classrooms are not safe for them psychologically, emotionally, very little learning will take place. Let us try through a relationship to make it safe for others. The catchword here, something we need to keep in mind is, if there are childhood deficits, automatically when we grow up as adults, these things don't go away. We will use our adult life, our teaching career, or any professional career to meet with these needs. And we will end up in our functioning, not really effectively functioning, but exhibit dysfunctions in our life. So coming back to an example of understanding relationship. My study of psychology has really taken me closer to this person of Jesus. So today I really enjoy looking at the life of Jesus and seeing how our ordinary teaching, learning, ordinary leadership, training and leadership, counseling and helping others is so well blended in the way Jesus taught his disciples. The model that I'm talking about for all of us is the story of Jesus after his resurrection, appearing to two disciples. The story is in Luke, St. Luke's Gospel, chapter 24, the story of the two disciples of Emmaus who were walking away from Jerusalem. And the reason why they were walking away was Jesus, their leader, their master, their hope, their dream, is now crucified. He is dead and buried. They lost hope. They are facing failure. They are hopeless. They're feeling really hopeless and in despair. dispirited. They are walking away from Jerusalem where Jesus was buried. They're walking away back to their home village, Emmaus. And we can see these disciples encountering more and more despair, disappointment, shattered, scared, dispirited, and all that. There are times in our teaching, learning dynamics, in our efforts to bring out the best in our students, there would be times when we feel hopeless, failure, despair, shattered. I would suggest, my dear friends, those of us familiar with the story of this, read this chapter 24 of St. Luke, and there we see Jesus walking with these disciples. He enters into the scene as a stranger, not as a crucified, resurrected Jesus, a stranger. He walks with them, listens to their stories in order to understand them. Even though they're talking about him, he doesn't say, guys, enough, I heard all of it. You're talking about me. No, he allows them to tell their stories, express their hopelessness, failure, their disappointments. And after that, he encounters them with hope, encounters them with fire, enthusiasm, so much so that they feel, wow, how did we forget all this? It was all there within us all the time. That's what is important. It's all within us all the time. If we have a big heart, an example, understanding relationship. It's here. Sometimes it is covered in the midst of hopelessness, failure, and despair. But it's all here, my dear teachers. We have to believe that and bring it out in times of closure. There is something here called be a dictionary. There's going to be many words on the screen, so be a dictionary. You don't have to check it out, but a relationship that understands is like a dictionary. Because we are going to encounter lots of students. I don't know how many students you encounter in your classrooms and situations, but we are going to encounter lots of students and children. We have to be like a dictionary. And the reason is, be a dictionary. Let us give meaning. What does a dictionary do? It gives meaning to everyone who refers to us. Be a dictionary in life. Give meaning to all who refer to us. Our students refer to us. We are our primary contact, more than even parents. Let us give meaning to those who refer to us. And a relationship that understands is giving this meaning. And when we give this meaning, and through this understanding relationship, we are actually helping our students and those in our church to certain behaviors and to certain attitudes and to certain mindset. What are some of these? We talked about acceptance. When we accept them, we are showing our students that they can accept their friends, they can accept their teachers, they can accept difficult situations. When we show a certain amount of confidence in ourselves and in them, we are giving them opportunities to be confident. When we respect them and respect ourselves too, or respect our colleagues, we are modeling how to respect self and others. When we encourage others, we are modeling our students to encourage others. When we apologize, oh, this is a difficult one. For us teachers, for us priests to apologize because we never do anything wrong in our situation. But when we apologize, we are teaching our students much more than knowledge, much more than fact, techniques. We are teaching them how to be true people. When our students know that my teacher, he or she made a mistake, but he or she was not afraid to apologize. Whoa, their respect for us grows, 100 times. Let us model apologies in our life for our students and forgiveness. In order to forgive, we have to be very, very courageous and brave and very confident. But when we forgive them, we are teaching them lessons in forgiving themselves and others. All of us will be aware that some of the things that our students find difficult is to forgive themselves for some failure or their mistake. We also show what it means to share. Another important thing is succeed and fail. We can ask ourselves, am I all about success all the time? Do I ever talk about failure in my life sometimes to appropriate situations? Because if we talked only about our achievements, our students are going to think, this teacher, he or she has only achievements. I cannot relate. But if they find that, well, he or she is not afraid to talk about a failure, they are going to realize, wow, I thought she never failed. He never failed. But if he can admit that he or she has failed, maybe I could also face my failures through the example that I've been given. And this is a very important lesson we can. And that's why I said be a dictionary. Give meaning to everyone who comes to us. We talked about relationship. I have two more important things I'd like to, and then we will come to a conclusion. Good relationship. Why do we talk about good relationships? Because I'm not into good relationship, a specialist or something, but good relationship is a must for happiness. This is pure science behind this. It's not some sort of a conclusion from abstract reasoning. Some of you may have come across this Harvard study, world's longest studies. Last 2 years ago, it was published by Robert Waldinger. It's on YouTube, but the study concluded in 2015. And notice the date when it started, 1938. We may say, could that be possible? 77-year-old study of 740 persons from their adolescence to their old age, which means some of them obviously have died, but they continued the study with those who are alive. Very significant study. And what is the question in this study? The research question was, what are the factors of happiness on the long run? Obviously, they are into their 80s, and it's a long run, and they came up with these findings. So Dr. Waldinger says, our study showed that people who fared the best were the people who leaned into relationships with family, friends, with community. Very important finding. People who are happy on the long run were people who had good relationships. I'd like to point out the study of the German study on online, where they said 48% of our students online have no contact with their teachers. I only hope they have good contact with their peers, their own friends. Otherwise, in the age of online, students may tend to think that good relationships are not important. They are so important. Another finding, aspects of childhood and adult experience predict the quality of intimate relationships in late life. Childhood and adult experience. Oh, isn't that important, my dear teachers, my dear educationers, to make sure that as we have these students with us, young, maybe older, enable them, cultivate within them good relationship skills. And we as adults cultivate a caring, listening, understanding relationship with them. And then a lot of learning will take place. And more especially, we will have prepared them for happiness in the long run. So Dr. Waldinger says, if you want to be happier and have stronger, positive relationships, replace screen time with people time. Replace screen time with people time. It's a little difficult for our young people, especially on the onslaught of this online and internet and social media to think that people time is important or screen time is not important. And the reason why I will substantiate this with some other studies and studies on human brain imaging, and then we'll understand the whole picture. This is from an article in National Geographic about beautiful brain. Maybe brief here. 20th century science and brain imaging technology studied brain's physical development and patterns of activity. And we discover, scientists tell us, that our brains take longer to develop than we had thought. I'd like to clarify. It is true, we were told that by the age of 6 or 8, a child's brain is developed to 90% of its size. This is what we have to clearly understand. Scientists tell us it may be physically 90% of our actual brain of an adult, but it has not got all the neural connections within it. From the age of 12 or till the age of 25, our physical brain may not grow in size, but it becomes 100 times more intricately connected. So this is something that we need to know. And the development moves from the back side of our head, of the brain, towards the frontal areas. And this is an important consideration we should keep in mind. Our brains undergo massive reorganization. This, I think, is the most important thing to remember for us dealing with young people. When the development of our brain, these intricate neural connections, that's almost 100 times more from the age of 8 till the age of 25, when it proceeds normally, people become better at balancing impulse or impulsive behavior, our desire, our goals, our self-interest, our rules about what is proper, what is not proper, ethics, and even altruism, our ability to love others, our ability to give more than receive, our ability to appreciate others more than seeking approval for ourselves. This is a gradual development. And this will make some insight in our life to say, why do young people, adolescents, teenagers, engage in impulsive behavior, risky behavior, things that are only about themselves and not about others? And maybe the science and the brain imaging of the brain has helped us to understand that this development of the prefrontal cortex takes time, and it doesn't all happen by the time we are 10 or 11 or 12. So this calls for a lot more of understanding from us adults, from us educators about our students. Maybe then we can enable them to make right decisions, proper choices, happy lives. So this is my question on to you on this last screen. Then, what makes a great teacher? There are many educationalists, teachers who will watch for a lot of things, I'm sure, and they are all true. But in this crisis situation, I only hope that our teaching learning dynamics will include a better understanding of this beautiful brain of our young people to discover the geniuses that they are. And that should be my response. At this moment, I'll stop here, and I hope at least some scattered thoughts out of this would have come up. My last one is a summary. We've just gone through a few things. If we can take back the urgency of developing an understanding relationship as a way to move ahead with this crisis situation, this and the other. We have put a few things here to summarize what you've seen. And if we can take back with us the example of the Master, the Lord Jesus, who taught us how to relate, then we can work towards drawing out the best from our students and making them happy, effective people. They're all geniuses, as Albert Einstein said. Let us help them to be models. I place this stop sign again to remind all of us that no matter what the crisis situation, let us not stop learning. We are all learning. We are teachers, we are young teachers, old teachers, retired teachers, where we are adults, we are always learning, because life never stops teaching. God bless you all. And I pray that our educational ventures will be marked by a relationship with our students that makes them feel there's someone who works with them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Father. We do appreciate and agree with important insights that we have received from you today, Reverend Father George. From your talk, we could mention some of the points that you have insisted. Number one, children learn the best when they like their teacher and when they think their beloved teacher likes them too. Point number two, there is a unique relationship between a teacher and the students where the teacher accepts the students in his or her true personality. And the third point, above all, for making us teachers realize that each student is a genius, and we as teachers only need to identify the real person in our student and guide him or guide her to excel. Children are apt to live up to what you believe of them, as rightly said by Lady Bird Johnson. Thank you very much, Father.
Yeah.
Live to love and to be loved. Exceptionally, the need of the time, the words of yours have fed us with your insight, intuition, and experience. This is one of the best experiences we ever had, Father. As we enjoy in the Lord always, your leading words to rejoice in the children was apt for our career, Father. We do hope you spend some of your valuable time answering and clarifying the queries of the teachers. Shall we, Father?
Yeah, thank you.
We have got the first question from Jimmy Jacob, who has asked, what pedagogical shift must be made in order to serve the remote social and learning needs of students, Father? I repeat, what pedagogical shifts must be made in order to serve the remote social and learning needs of students? Could you, Father?
All right. Thank you for the nice question. I think it is very much related to what I was talking about. So let me see if I can revise something that I said. So what pedagogical shift? And I would think at this time, the pedagogical shift should be not an eagerness to fill ourselves with knowledge for knowledge's sake, but come forward as a person who understand the student. Because remember, the students are also in crisis situation. They probably have not understood everything, especially what happens to the psychological side. So I would come back to that urgency as teachers to be a person who walks with them and assuring them, even in the point of lockdown, we are there by your side. So the importance of being an accompanying person, walking with them. Yeah.
That was exactly a suiting, Father. Let me post you, if you permit, the next question, also possibly the last question. When a teacher is aware that his or her student is a fish, the teacher is expected to make the child a bird. How could the teacher deal with such situations, Father?
Oh, that's a very difficult question. In this sense, that if the calling of a fish is to be a fish, then the best that we teachers can do is to help that fish to be an excellent fish. I think if we try to make it into a bird, we might be tampering with the purpose of the Almighty God. You know what I mean? But I know the question is coming from a perspective of our educational system, in which we don't have sufficient flexibility to adjust to individual needs and individual need for excellence. But we can also help someone to be a wonderful fish, and at the same time, from deep down in the water, while they are good fish, look and appreciate a good bird flying, and not feel bad that I'm a fish, I'm not a bird, helping them to accept themselves. Well, there's a funny story or funny question in the answer to give, but there is another part of it which I think is important. Many of our students think that because they come from maybe poor economic backgrounds, maybe poor or distant places, they don't have what it takes to be in a well-to-do school or well-to-do city or things of that sort. So they are missing out on a lot of things. I think that is not true. What we have to enable as teachers is working with them to draw out their best. It's better to be the best fish than be a poor bird.
Thank you, Father. You have enlightened us. And thank you, Reverend Father George Palamatathil STB, answering and clarifying the doubts of our teachers, though it is just 2 questions, but it excels all the minds of our teachers. Thank you, Father, for intellectual and spiritual applications. And as everyone tries to be the best teacher in their career, here we recognize you and invite Ms. Smitha from Sacred Heart Matriculation High Secondary School to express the vote of thanks. Ma'am?
A very pleasant evening.
Go ahead, ma'am.
A very pleasant evening to all the wonderful people present for this webinar session. Once, a great man said, feeling gratitude and not expressing is like wrapping a present and not giving it. I take this opportunity to put all my gratitude in the form of thanks to the Reverend Father Thomas Pautuparambil, Vicar General and Secretary of the Diocese Education. As we are greatly delighted by the topic understanding teaching learning dynamics in crisis situations through the words of a vibrant resource person, Reverend Father George Palamatathil SDB. First and foremost, let us thank our Lord the Almighty for his blessing on us to make this webinar a magnificent one. I bow my head in gratitude, thanking His Excellency Mar George Rajendran, SDB, Bishop of Syro Malabar Catholic Diocese of Thakkale, for his enormous cooperation and encouragement to empower the teachers in this digital era. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. My profound gratitude to our very Reverend Father Thomas Pautuparambil, Vicar General and Secretary of the Education Commission of the Diocese, who is always passionate in finding novel ways of teaching and learning. Deepest thanks to you, Father. Today, my words are not enough to express the gratitude to our resource person, Reverend Father George Palamatathil, SDB, Director, Siloam, Shillong, Meghalaya. Father, I'm sure that the teachers have profoundly benefited through your talk on the topic Understanding Teaching Learning Dynamics in Crisis Situations, which radiated a source of energy within us. Heartfelt thanks to you, Father.
Yeah.
I'm also grateful to Reverend Father Sanil John, correspondent of Alfonsa Matriculation High Secondary School, Nagarkoil, who helped us to begin the session with the blessing from the Almighty through his deep and meaningful prayer. Thank you, Father. Next, I acknowledge my sincere gratitude to all Reverend Fathers, sisters of various congregations under Thakkale Diocese, and special thanks and appreciation to all the correspondents, the principals, and the teachers of all educational institutions under Takalet Diocese for your enormous cooperation in making this webinar a great success. I thank all the educational institutions under Takalet Diocese, Alfonsa Matriculation Higher Secondary School Nagarkoil, Sacred Heart Matriculation Higher Secondary School Padandal Modu, APJM Matriculation Higher Secondary School Susaipuram, Zemada Matriculation Higher Secondary School Kristurajapuram, Pulari Matriculation School Puttur Sengote, St. Mary's Central School Kaliyal, Christ CMI Central School Anjugramam, Mount Carmel Matriculation High School Mulukodu, Carmel Jyoti Matriculation Higher Secondary School Kolachal, Carmel Mada Matriculation Higher Secondary School Kanyakumari, St. Michael Matriculation Higher Secondary School Kataturai, St. Francis of Assisi Primary School Merakod, Sacred Heart Matriculation Higher Secondary School Kazhavantittai, Sacred Heart Nursery and Primary School Patukani, John Paul II Matriculation Higher Secondary School Kulashegaram, Sanjo English Medium School Anedi, Zero Malabar Catholic Tamil Schools, and St. Alfonsa College of Arts and Science. I would like to thank the technical partners, St. Anthony's College Shillong. I am extremely grateful to Reverend Father Joby Joseph, Rector of the college, and Reverend Brother Albert Lonley, the principal of the college, for constantly supporting us. A big thank you for Professor Nathaniel Major for his perfect and technical support. My deep sense of gratitude to the program partners, St. Alfonsa College of Arts and Science, Susaipuram, Karungal. Once again, I thank everyone who made the webinar of the day a fruitful experience. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ms. Smita, for recognizing all who have contributed for the successful completion of this training program today. A kind notice, teachers and professors, the feedback form is sent to you over email. Kindly fill the form and send us back. Tell me and I will forget. Show me and I may remember. Involve me and I will understand. We are happy having involved with specific concentration on today's thought. Till we adjourn for the next session on 21st August 2020. Have safe life journey on board. Thank you.